Hey guys, well you made it. This is the final entry into autoloaders. The mechanism we're going to talk about today is DAO, which stands for double action only. So you know how the single action only, the gun is useless unless the hammer is down. Um, in DAO, there is no hammer. There's no hammer for you to grab or to touch to put it into single action. It's just double action only, and the hammer's on the inside and it's covered, so you can't get to it. Okay. Now the two guns that I have to kind of explain this mechanism is the SIG P250 and the Ruger LCP2. Now, I know what you're thinking. The Ruger LCP2 is not double action only, and that's true. The Ruger LCP1 was double action only. The Ruger LCP2 is more of a hammer fire that identifies as a striker fired. Now, I think the reason why this happened was because when the Ruger LCP1 came out, a lot of people complained about the double action only trigger. And there is a lot of merit to that statement. The DAO trigger is not a good trigger. Just based on how it's supposed to work mechanically, it is not a trigger that's going to be favorable to a lot of people. And I shot SADA revolver my whole life, and SADA autoloader is not a big deal to me. But even I can tell you, I don't like the DAO trigger either. Now, sometimes it depends on the gun. I have a Taurus M380 and that DAO is okay. But when I first got the Sig Sauer P250, I really hated the double action only trigger. Something about it was, it just couldn't be smooth, and and in DAO itself, you can't take a real focused pull, like any SADA, when you pull the trigger, right? It's very controlled and focused. If you try to do that with DAO and you lose too much focus, it gets too heavy, and then you find yourself, jerking the trigger, which is what you don't want to do. Now, I've seen people talk about the DAO in a variety of ways. The first is that you have to use a method that is completely unlike anything you've trained before. Some people would say you have to do, and this is generally not okay in marksmanship, you would just, as you pull the trigger, you actually do it really slowly. And that's not what you're supposed to do, but they say that's how DAO works. If you pull the trigger really slowly, right, then it's really easy to get shots on target, which is not surprising. I think anybody can do that. But typically, the accepted knowledge is that you don't want to pull the trigger real slowly, carefully. You really just want to get in there, smooth, clean pull, and that's it. Okay, so that's one interpretation of the DAO trigger. Now, in consideration of DAO, you'll know that with SAO, SADA, and striker fired, there are principles where they're built upon each other, right? And there are changes to the mechanism that make sense, that address issues that people have. In my opinion, I don't think that DAO was created to address any issue. It seemed to be more of an attempt to reinvent the wheel. But that's not to say that's entirely a bad thing. There are actually a variety of guns that people very much enjoy DAO with. And it's a very, like this kind of sized gun, like a pocket carry gun. An example is the Smith & Wesson Bodyguard. People love that gun as a DAO gun. And then, as I said before, the Ruger LCP1 is also DAO, but people seem to be a little bit more critical of that one than the Smith Bodyguard. So DAO was not designed in a way to, upgrade the methods of SADA. I think it was just a design change that was probably desired for a very small, very compact gun. Usually, in comparison, people will talk about the Baby Browning in 25 ACP. And the problem with that is that that's a single action only gun. And as you can imagine, as the gun gets smaller, the safety is really tiny. You might not, take it off. You might not put it on. And so the answer to that, having a tiny small gun in DAO, seemed to make a lot more sense. As I mentioned before, the DAO does not have single action capability. There is no hammer that you can get to. There's a hammer there. If I pull, you can see the hammer right there. But it's not something that you can get to externally. And as you can imagine, the second strike capability is very good. Same thing with SADA, right? You charge the gun, you take a shot, it's nothing, you just pull again. You know, even though I always say just, put another round in there. But in regards to second strike, DAO works well for it, SADA works well for it. SAO, you can make it work, and striker fired is absolutely not possible. So unlike SADA, DAOs that I've seen don't usually have a safety. I'm sure you can get it as an option, but stock, I don't think DAOs come with a manual safety. And the reason why is because the trigger is bad. It's not, it's bad by design. But the weight, it's the weighted pull is the same as SADA, 8, 9, 10 pounds. Like I said, that's enough for most people to act as a safety. But being the mechanism of DAO itself, I find the trigger to be super bad, that they really don't need a manual safety in my opinion. Now the training protocol for this firearm, there's really kind of two things you can do, right? The first is just practice that really bad trigger. No matter how bad it is, you just keep practicing with it. Try to have a really kind of a smooth pull, just like you would for any gun actually, right? But there's also, I've seen people talk about a different method for DAO, and that's pulling the trigger really slowly. This is generally not accepted in marksmanship, because you don't want people pulling the trigger super slowly type of thing. It's not a good habit to get into, but some people say that actually works well for DAO. So it's true that if you're not used to the trigger and you pull the way you're supposed to, some people are going to see kind of like a jerking kind of movement type of thing, because the DAO trigger is a very long trigger, and any little hiccup is going to be magnified. So the idea is that if you go slower, right, then it's very easy to get shots on target, which is true. Like that didn't move at all, right? But again, I like to separate those two. Those two principles are not, they don't work well together. So either you have to manually remember to train one way and another way a different way, which would be a lot of work, or you can just forego that and have them all trained the same way. That's up to you, but I would strongly prefer that you make all your martial arts the same, or at least as similar as possible. You don't want to get into, this gun uses that ammo, that gun uses that ammo, and after you shoot this way, shoot that way. It's a lot more trouble than it's worth. Well, that's it for the Autoloader series. You've seen the different mechanisms from striker fire to single action only, single action and double action only. That pretty much covers most mechanism firing types for autoloaders. If we continue this, I think we should go to revolvers, which is a whole different animal, but it pretty much uses the exact same principle except for striker fired. I don't believe there's a striker fired revolver, but there is an SAO revolver, SADA revolver, and a DAO revolver. So you can look forward to that. Maybe we can talk about long guns, rifles, shotguns. They also will have lever action or pump action or bolt action. Pretty clear distinctions, honestly, but we can still go through them if you want. I hope this video helped you out, and if you have any questions, let me know. Put them in the comments or message me on Instagram. Other than that, you guys take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.